Real Estate Uncensored. We're having a live show, and this is gonna be a little bit different. So as opposed to talking about what we usually do, which is, building an audience and attracting attention online, reaching the right people, converting them into sales and all that fun stuff, all that fun sales and marketing stuff, we've got a little bit different topic. We're going to talk about buying businesses with little or no money down. We've got a repeat guest with us today. Ryan Snow is back. He's the author of The Miracle Morning for Salespeople, but we're actually not talking about that today because Ryan's doing some really fun stuff outside of that I want to talk with him about. But he is here. We'll bring him in a second. But first, the Junior Grandmaster is here. He is firmly ensconced in the co-pilot seat where he so belongs, far, far away from me. Greg McDaniel, what's up?
You love being around me, you big liar. It's your favorite thing when you get big old hugs from me and you're just like, oh, God, yeah. It's like being hugged by like a giant Labrador with a big tongue, just all kinds of love. And you're just like, enough. Okay, get away from me.
Sure, it's exactly like that. This is why we live 800 miles away from each other.
I think it's more than that, but yeah, sure, whatever. So we also have the Evil Bald Ninja. Evil Bald Ninja, what up?
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello.
How's everybody? So this is interesting. So I like how I'm a fan of how you like that.
Oh, hello.
Listen, if you can name that movie. You remember the part where Gaylord Fokker's walking up to get on the plane and the lady's typing vigorously. He's the only one in the airport. And she's like, she ignores him for 15 minutes. And then she's like, oh, hello. That's what I do.
That's what that
was. So movie reference.
Okay.
So listen real quick. I'm excited, Gregors, because Matt said something prophetic when he opened the show. And that was,
I know.
We are not going to be talking about what we think we're going to be talking about. There's a big reveal that's going to happen during the show. And it's a special surprise for Matt Johnson.
I can't wait for this. We've been planning this for weeks.
Said, all right.
I'm glad I'm on today.
And we have to thank someone very special for this because Gene and I have something just for you, Matt. And I think you're probably going to shit your pants.
And another reason why it's good that yous are 820 miles apart.
All right, lay it on me.
You want it now or you want to wait?
Oh, if we can wait, let's wait. Let's build the tension.
Stay with us.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's do this. So everybody that since we're live, let's everybody that's in the live feed take your best guess at what they can possibly do that'll throw me off my game.
You're never gonna see this one coming.
Okay.
I don't think it'll throw you off your game.
There's a reverse side of this that I think actually might make him actually laugh. So yes.
All right. Well, let's bring Ryan in officially. Welcome back to Real Estate Uncensored. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks, guys.
Good. So I gave you a brief kind of introduction, and we're going to talk about buying businesses and stuff like that. Obviously, you're the author of Miracle Morning for Salespeople. That's where most people know you nationally from. You did a lot of speaking engagements a lot around that book, over the last several years and stuff. So I know a lot of people have attended those events, or they know you online from the community. They know you from your association with Hal and all that fun stuff. But tell us a little bit about, just give us kind of the 2-minute overview of what you're doing right now, where you're based out of, and how did you start getting into, like, maybe what was the first business you looked at buying? Like, what turned you on to the idea initially?
Yeah. So let's start with where I am. So I'm just outside of Boston. I live about an hour north of Boston. I'm in the seacoast of New Hampshire. I run a real estate brokerage that's smaller. We've got a few hundred agents in the area, and they flip about 125 houses a year. So I GM there for them. And the way that I actually got started at looking at purchasing businesses was one of my businesses had always been my sales team in the past. And I let that go a couple of years ago and sold that off and got rid of the last couple of agents. And when this whole COVID thing unfolded, Matt, as you know, I had you on as a guest, and I was doing the whole live interview piece on the Elevate series and elevating conversations about what was going on and how people were elevating conversations around raising their business. And one of the guests was Cody Sanchez, who's now my business partner at Unconventional Acquisitions. And I had already been doing some of this stuff in the past. I just didn't realize that that's what I was doing. But big businesses grow all the time through acquisition, right? Like you got Facebook buys Instagram and Amazon buys Whole Foods and whatever. So there's a space to do that in small business. And she was talking about it on the show. And I was talking about building out the online courses, having shifted away from speaking. And she said, oh, I really would like to get a course going on this topic. And the more we talked about it, it was just like made sense. So we started like, I don't know, 3 days later, outlining the course and what it needed to be. And now we have a course and a mastermind running on it. But what initially caught my eye was just the ability to build businesses that were already related to things that I was doing, right? So the first one that sort of came together for me is I just took on 50% of a digital marketing company. And that came with zero money down and into it. And essentially what happened was there's a guy locally to me that's already running a digital marketing company. He has several clients. They're higher end clients. They're paying $1,500 to $3,000 a month. And he's running all of their social and some of their web landing pages and all that stuff. And then there's companies out there like Keeping Current Matters and things like that that are cheap, that are like $25 or whatever. What there wasn't was like a middle ground of like, it's branded to me, my face is on it, my phone number is on it. I don't have to think about it. Like, it's all done for me, and we can manage any of those boosted posts and ads and whatever. So I just went to him and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I was thinking about starting this business as a startup, but I don't want to run it. I don't have like the time to be able to do that. But what I do have is all the connections within the real estate market. And I have a lot of people who already want it, right? We were actually hiring for this position in the brokerage to have somebody do this for our agents. And so I knew there was the need, and I had the product, and I already had all the designs for it. And I just went to him and said, what do you think? And he said, well, I don't want to compete with you. I'd rather partner with you. And so that's what we did. And it just worked out that it was like, okay, well, basically what I'm bringing to the table, what he's bringing to the table, we decided it was a good partnership at 50-50, and I own half of this company now. And I literally don't do anything other than I will be promoting it. I'll do like a free live training like once a month that we let people into the webinar, and we'll talk about how to use social media to grow their business. And then at the end, it's like, hey, here's an option if you don't have time to do it or the knowledge or desire to go learn it. And so that was one of the first ones that I sort of became involved in. And now we're looking at other pieces with Cody and I, like buying businesses. So right now we're trying to buy two businesses. One would be a small ad agency that would actually incorporate all of our businesses together, because we're already spending so much on vendors. So one thing is go look at your biggest expense number and go, hey, what if I just own that company? Right. So that's another sort of facet to it. And then another one that we're looking for is to buy a website, actually. So some sort of blog website or something that's focused around small businesses, entrepreneurs, whatever, that already has a ton of viewers and followers and good content. And now, rather than having ad spend on that page, just actually owning that page. And why not be able to be in front of your audience basically for free on another page that you own that is actually profitable and drives money. Interesting.
Love it. Okay, man, there's a lot to dig into. So that's interesting though, but I like the idea of starting with an extension of the areas where you know. So I've got this sitting right here. Profit First, Michael Michalowicz. And he mentions in that book that, like he got himself into trouble by immediately thinking he was the golden boy and had the Midas touch and went and invested in a lot of companies, thinking that, I'm a superstar. Like I'll turn them around. I'll get them rolling. And I think he got into some things that he just didn't understand. And yeah, I've noticed that the people that seem to be doing it well, Jeff Cohn is one of them. They are buying up and getting into ancillary businesses that are all driven by the goose that lays the golden egg, right? So Jeff Cohn's real estate team, and then he's got, title and mortgage and insurance. And now he's got, like you said, a digital marketing company that's going to do like all the 3D renders of all their houses and stuff. And that's something you can provide. So yeah, so I like that. That's definitely, I think, one of the keys to getting into something like that is it's an extension of the market that you already know. And you mentioned something like just thinking about what your biggest expense is. That's insane. Like that is a really great tip, because you know exactly, like if you're a buyer for that service, you know why it sells and you know what you're willing to pay for it.
Right. And so Cody gave me a good example of this one too. So she's my business partner. She also is a partner in EEC, which is basically a fund company for cannabis companies. And one of their invested clients that they have looked at their biggest expense line, and it was like the company that pre-rolled everything for them. And they were like, well, what if we just bought one of those? So they went out and were able to buy one of those and like cut their costs by like 2/3. It was like a third of the cost to have them in-house. And so they just became like another wing, another division of the company.
Right. Interesting, man. This is awesome. Okay. So let's back up a little bit and let's talk about just how do you recognize if you're the type of person that should be doing this? And you've got, I think, a few different types of like situations or scenarios where you should look at buying a business versus like looking at getting into flipping and rehabbing and just all the normal things that real estate people kind of think of when we think of investing. So what is the first type of person who should even be open to this kind of strategy?
Yeah, so I've got three. So one is the entrepreneur, right? Like you know that you want to go start a business. So my example of the digital marketing company, I was like, I'm going to go start a digital marketing company.
Right.
It'll just be another company that I'm going to have. And as I started to think about it, I thought about all the costs of getting up and running and then how long it takes to become profitable and like finding your first few clients and how much time that takes as opposed to like finding the next few when you already have 100. You know what I mean? So that person, it would be much faster and much more cost effective for them to find a business that maybe is already up and running and profitable that they can purchase that maybe hasn't done a good enough job like marketing and getting in front of the people. Like, so how can you utilize what things you have around you, what resources you have around you, what people you already have around you that could increase that business? And so if I buy a business that already makes $100,000 a year, as opposed to starting from scratch and dumping 20 or 30 grand into building out a website and a blog and either hiring salespeople or whatever, or doing all the work myself, the amount of time that I save, the amount of money that I save, I can put myself 3 or 4 years ahead into the future. And like 80 something percent, 90% of the businesses that start up fail anyway, and don't ever make it to profitability until year 4 or 5. Yeah. So if we can immediately be profitable with a purchase, it makes a lot more sense.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're an entrepreneur, you know, it's something that you could do yourself, but it's a shortcut essentially to profitability, buying something where a lot of the initial hurdles have already been overcome. Some of the infrastructure is up. So that makes sense. Okay, well, so it's number 2.
So number 2 is somebody that already owns a small business, right? Like, so think about a broker owner, right? Who already owns, or you mentioned like Jeff Cohn, right? And then you add title and you add all these other things around you. So what are the immediate things around you that you could expand into? The other way to look at this is, what about just getting into other markets, right? You already own a landscaping company in like Boston. What about buying one in Worcester, right? Rather than expanding out into Worcester and hiring all new employees and just starting from scratch, just buy one that already exists, rebrand, and cross culture. So there's other pieces that come with that. Obviously, you have to create a unified company at some point, which creates its own obstacles, but it's a lot faster to be profitable than just starting from scratch in new territory.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Greg Harrelson is doing in his market. He's expanding out. I think he owns offices in 3, maybe 4 cities now. Yeah, I mean, he's essentially going and acquiring a smaller kind of mom and pop brokerage, 100, 150 agents, goes in there, installs his model, and really like leverages his zone of genius, which is all the Infusionsoft, like installing Infusionsoft. That comes with all the follow-up campaigns. Then he's got probably Contact Junkie is going in there as well to help with the follow-up. So he's essentially installing marketing systems that he already knows works from his core team into this new thing. Obviously, you're going to have agents that cycle out that don't want to be a part of that. You replace them with new recruits, and the next thing you know, you've still got 100 agents, but now you've got 100 agents that are bought into this new system, and you're just up and running, as opposed to, let's say, starting an office from scratch, and it takes you a year of your heart and soul to recruit 100 agents.
At least a year, yeah. And you're all in, and now you've taken yourself out of your other business as well, right? So
Exactly.
now you've done detriment on one side to try and grow something else from scratch. I think what you gain there too when people start expanding like that is, I'm an econ guy, so economies of scope and economies of scale, right? You're either adding more like line items around you that are services and things that you can offer and cross sell between the people that you already have, or you're expanding scale and then you're utilizing, like you said, the resources that he's already got in place with things like ClickFunnels or whatever, and also with staff, right? Like if I've got a staff that's already managing escrow accounts, like to manage it for another office is probably not that big a deal. I might have to add more staff as I add more offices, but it's not a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of waste that happens when we're scaled down so small.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can, like in Jeff Cohn's example, office space being one of the biggest expenses. So all of his ancillary businesses work out of one office space. They're able to use one, you know, like the digital marketing company they bought. He's going to do the digital marketing for all of them, including the ad buying, all that stuff. Yeah. So you can start to cut down on just the infrastructure cost of multiple service businesses, put them all in one.
And one front desk person, right? So if you're paying somebody $40,000 or $1,000 a year to just sit at the front desk and answer phones and greet people when they come in, and they're doing that for 4 businesses, well, and now it'll cost everybody $12,500 instead of $50,000.
And there's a question here, Claire. How do I do ClickFunnels? My recommendation, knowing ClickFunnels, is don't do it if you're in real estate. That would be my personal advice on that. There's other forms of real estate lead generation that you can get into without building ClickFunnels yourself. And I wouldn't get into building ClickFunnels for real estate lead generation. That is a rabbit hole that will suck you down for a very, very long time potentially. So, okay. So yeah.
I
Yeah,
agree.
it's,
1,000%,
okay, I
by the way.
appreciate that. I'm glad
yeah.
you back my experience up with that. It is not ClickFunnels is not fun anyway, but I don't even know that I can name a single person that's really made ClickFunnels work for real estate. Oh, for education, that's something different. If you're selling online courses, yes, but I can tell you most of the people that I know, including guys like Frank Kern that have been around and know Russell Brunson personally, are still mostly moving off of ClickFunnels into things like Kartra, for example. So just a quick heads up on that. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about, we've got entrepreneur. We've got the person who already runs an existing small business. What's the third person who should look at this?
So the third person would just be an investor looking for additional passive streams of income, right? You can buy some of these businesses. So when we say small business, we're talking about like 500,000 to 5 million in revenue. So in that range, right, 5 million in revenue could be, say it's a 30% profit business, 1.5 million in profit. There's plenty of room within that profit to have good operators working without you being part of the business at all. Sometimes those people are already in the business. In some cases, we see this, like where someone's looking at some of these bigger businesses, they'll go to the second in command who maybe wasn't in a position to be able to buy the business or never even thought about it or wouldn't have done it, but would step into the head role, move up one notch basically, and have some small percentage of ownership so they're tied into the win of the business. And so what's cool about this, and if you've already been investing in like real estate and things like that, then there's a lot of crossover, right? Like valuations are not drastically different. You're looking for like a multiple of either revenue or profit. We're teaching people to go based on multiple of profit. And if you look at some of the big sites like Biz Buy Sell and things like that, you can find what those multiples are. But for the most part, we're saying between 2 and 3 times annual profit is what you're looking at. Right?
Okay.
So that's essentially, they know how to value things for the most part. They also know how to leverage other people's money. And so what's cool is in small business land, it's actually fairly easy to leverage money for small business. So you've got SBA loans out there right now, which they're virtually like giving away. A lot of them will do seller financing for portions of it because it's actually better for them tax-wise in a lot of cases to take the money over the next 2 or 3 years. In some cases, the agreements have the owner tied in for the next 6 to 12 months or 2 years anyway as a consultant to make sure that the business stays running and moving forward. So when you start combining some of those things together, it doesn't necessarily take any more money than it would to invest in, say, a real estate piece than it would to invest in a small business like that, except the cash on cash return is going to be way higher, right? So for example, if you buy a $3 million building, right, the 1% rule on that says that you're going to be collecting how much in rent?
What was it, 30 grand a month?
Yeah, like 30 grand a month, right? So $270,000.
It's a lot of math in a short period of time.
Yeah, that was a good one. $360,000, let's say, over the course of the year is what you're collecting, but that's revenue. Okay. Whereas a $3 million company on a 3x purchase price, right, is probably $1 million a year in profit. So you're talking about the difference between making $360,000 in revenue before expenses versus making $1 million in profit for basically what's the same upfront investment.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So that's the 3 types of people. So you've got entrepreneur, small business owner, and an investor. Okay. First of all, before I like push any farther, Greg and Gene, what are you thinking? Questions?
I got a lot of questions. I mean, when it comes to buying, is there a certain specific person that would be the right type of person to be going out and buying small businesses? Do you need a certain mindset or a certain personality type? I mean, who would be the person that when you talk to them, you're like, you know what, you're the right guy or gal to go out there and buy said business? Or is it just for anybody who understands the math?
Good question. I think anybody who understands the math could do it. I also think that entrepreneurial mindset sort of plays in here. And there's probably somebody in the mix that has that mindset. And that's one of the reasons I actually see it working for a lot of real estate agents or salespeople or investors or whatever, because they typically already have that sort of mindset. I think having somebody with that math background on your team to be able to go figure these things out and does it work is helpful, but that's easier to pay for than it is to the person who's got like the business focused mindset.
And here's the other question I have is, and this is what I've been typing vigorously, trying to find the answers as you guys are talking. Where do you find these businesses? I mean, and how do you make sure this is a viable business for you? because I mean, there's so many pitfalls. I mean, I'm listening to this conversation. I'm going like, holy sheep shit, man. Like I'm a little freaking terrified of this conversation because I mean, there's things I don't know, and I don't know a lot of things. Matt, shut up. Don't say anything to that. But you know what? He just gives me the hand like, what? I wasn't going to say anything.
I'm in the same boat you are.
But I mean, how do you make sure this is a good thing? I mean, should I go buy a CBD business? Should I go buy a weed business? Should I go buy a dry cleaner? I mean, where and how do you find these, and how do you evaluate them?
Yeah. So you evaluate them based on like at least having 3 to 5 years worth of their financials in front of you. For one, like you need to be able to dig into the financials, and you don't pay for things based on anything other than what they earn through taxes, right?
After taxes or pre-taxes?
No, you're looking at what they filed their taxes as to what their profit was.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
made up numbers on top of that, we're not really going to. Now you might, in some of the smaller business cases, there's going to be what's called like seller discretionary funds where they paid for their car through the business or car insurance or health insurance or whatever. And that actually could be added back into the profit line because that is on paper. We did see that revenue coming in. It was above and beyond the cost of the business. And then essentially you're going to pay somewhere between 2 to 3 to 4 times, let's say, but we're gearing most people towards 2 to 3 times profit. And that's how you're valuing it. Now,
So we're looking on Shark Tank, and they're always doing a 5x, evaluation. Is that abnormal or is that normal?
So be careful with Shark Tank because what they're evaluating on, first of all, for most of those deals aren't real, right? They don't come together exactly the way they say they are. They're going to go dig in and find out what the real numbers are. But the other piece is there may be some 5x businesses, but they better have a pretty big moat around them. So when you say 5x, think about what you're saying. You're basically saying, I 100% believe that over the next 5 years, I can reclaim all of that money. So I'm willing to pay 5x. Like that profit stream is going to exist into the future for at least that long. And it would actually have to be longer than that for it to be worthwhile because you've got present value of that money, which is less than it is in the future. Right.
Yeah. So that's what 5x means. It's a 5-year evaluation to get your initial investment back. That's what that is.
It's a 5 times multiple of this year's profit, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now,
but what it means is that over the course of 5 years, you're assuming they're going to be profitable at 20%. Right. Minimum. That's just to make the money back and not lose. And that's a high profit margin.
Here's the thing though. Here's where I want you guys to keep in mind that they are drastically different things, what we were talking about from Shark Tank. Shark Tank is often buying companies that are like barely up and running.
Yeah.
That like they're buying based on the future value being much higher than what it currently is. Right. What I'm saying is buy a stream of income and only pay for based on what that stream of income is today. And then if you have the ability to grow that business because of tools and resources and whatever you have, great, but you're not paying for that today. You're paying based on the value of the company today. Shark Tank is sort of betting on the future of the company. That is not at all what I'm suggesting that you do.
Yeah, that's like true angel investing, startup investing. That isn't what we're talking about here. So you're talking about you're buying a stream of income so that if nothing else happens, it's a solid investment on its own. Even if you treated it like, let's say, a house where you're not involved, you're not rehabbing it, you're not improving it in any way. You're just saying, I'm going to buy a stream of income and I'm going to let it sit, that the deal still makes sense, even if that's all you do.
Now, I wouldn't buy that deal if I didn't think that I could add to it, right? Because just from like the flipper or the burr mentality or whatever, I want to go then add to that business. Like, what other markets could they be in? What other marketing are they not doing well? Like, I am looking for opportunities, but I'm going to buy it at the rate at which, if all it did was continue to operate, then that's going to be a good purchase.
Right.
And if what I was saying about biz buy sell, if you go look there, you can see the average multiples that each of the different types of businesses are selling at based on the ones that have recently sold. The benefit in this market is, though, there's so many of them available, right? There's more than 2.5 million small businesses between 500,000 and 5 million for sale right now. Only about 1 out of every 11 is going to sell in the next 12 months. So if you're talking about like supply and demand, there's a ton of supply. The reason I think the demand is so low is because the big PE companies and stuff like that are not going to want to touch these small companies unless they have to. Like they're all after like 10 million, 20 million, $30 million companies. Like that's what they want. Right. So there's not a lot of players. And then you've got guys who are really smart, but have just never really like considered this as an option. And they're like, all right, well, now this is like foreign to me. Right. And so people just sort of like get scared and shy away from it, just like you said, Greg. And that's why we built the course, because after doing this a handful of times. Now, Cody's bought hundreds of companies, right? Because she's in the funding side. So this is how we ended up partnering on this piece. And as I start to look at more and more and more of these deals, it becomes pretty apparent like which ones make sense. And I would say I wouldn't just pick a random industry and say I want to go buy a business there. Personally, that's not what I would do. It's not like I'm looking for the industry where I see the most growth, right? Like I'm not betting on industries. I'm saying, hey, where can I have an impact in a company that could actually make me more than it is now? And if I can buy it for what it's worth today and use leverage to do it, it's going to make a lot of sense for me.
So let me ask you a quick question, Ryan. You said don't just pick a business at random. So how would you go about evaluating a business and what you want to buy? Because I'm looking at the Biz Buy Sell website right now. As you were talking, now I'm looking at automotive and boats, agricultural, building, construction, communication and media, yada yada. There's a whole list here of what you can go buy. I mean, do you just go by your gut? Do you go by kind of what you know? How does that work?
I would go by the opportunity. So I guess it depends. I would want somebody at least in the field, in the business that knows. So if I don't know, then I'm partnering with somebody that does, right? Otherwise, I'm buying something that I know or feel like I have a good understanding of. But the other piece to this too is there's also something to be said for buying something because it's a really good deal, right? Like it's similar to real estate. Like the win is in the purchase. So if I know it's a good deal, that's fine. And I can pay other people to evaluate to make sure if it's outside of my realm. And let's say I had no idea about real estate and I want to buy a brokerage. I have like 10 other people I can go talk to about what I should be paying for a brokerage. What are things I should look for? You know what I mean? So I would just be interviewing and pulling knowledge from people and pay them as a consultant if I had to, or I would pull them in as a partner.
Well, you know why they call brokers, right?
Yeah, I do.
Because they're always broke. Don't buy a brokerage.
Correct.
I mean, that is fascinating. You mentioned something here that really kind of perked up my antennas. And you're like, I have people I can go pay to evaluate it. And that's a fascinating concept because, I mean, that's where my biggest roadblock has been so far in this conversation. I'm like, well, this is a fascinating idea, but dude, I don't know what I don't know. And so how can I know when I don't know? So where do you find these people?
I mean, go talk to them. They're already running those businesses, right?
Matt, I want you to evaluate my next purchase, okay, buddy? And I buy a gas station. So can you start crunching those numbers, please?
Yeah, exactly. I'll get right on that.
So I got a couple, right? There's two of them here. And I think the one you just said made me think about the season we're in, right? And I just wonder, like, with your expertise in this area and the history and how we talk about how this whole coronavirus is going to affect house buying and the markets and businesses and all that stuff. And I'm just curious as to your take as if I was getting into this now, do you see that of those $2 million businesses, do you think there's going to be a rise in the amount of people that are selling them because of hard times? Should I wait to buy them at a discount? Like what's your prediction and what is your thought on this coming up over the next 12, 24 months?
Well, let me give the first, I don't have a crystal ball caveat that everybody has to give, right?
All right, show's over.
There's the bullshit answer. And then, no. And then the real answer is, I mean, yeah, I would be looking for things that are going to be sort of protected even in a down economy, right? So things that people still need. So what are those things? Like home services and maintenance and things like that people are going to pay for anyway, because they're going to have to. I think that you're already able to buy them at discount. So one of the other questions that Greg had asked before is, where do you find these businesses? Well, one, there's like an MLS for them, right? They're all over the place. You go to brokers for them. You can do that. But your best deals, just like in real estate, are going to come off market. They're going to come from the conversations you have with people in your sphere that know that this is the type of business you're looking for, and so is thinking about leaving. But the biggest impact is going to come from the fact that baby boomers are retiring, right, at like 10,000 people a day or something like that. And about 19% of them own these small businesses. And so people walk away from these businesses all the time, right? Like a plumber who has $1 million volume business that just stops plumbing. Like most of them don't even think about the fact that that's a viable business that they could sell. I mean, even just their past customer database. We see it in real estate, right? Like agents that just leave the business that were doing 25 million. Well, their database would definitely have been worth something to somebody, but a lot of people just don't think about it that way. And there's been books written on that at this point. But that's not the only industry that you can do that in, and they exist all over the place. So yeah, I mean, I would be looking for things with crossover. I know one thing that I'm working on right now with the brokerage, because we do all the flips, is like, hey, do we buy an HVAC company? Do we buy a plumbing company? Do we buy an electrical company? Because we don't want to start them and run them. But if I can get one with an operator in place that already has enough business to afford them, then I can increase their work with 125 flips, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of value add scenarios just around you that if you just spent a little bit of time thinking about, like, where are there overlaps in either what I'm already spending money on or what places I could add value to, there's a ton of different businesses around you.
Well, I mean,
Love
just very, very, very simply speaking, for real estate agents, I mean, what's one thing that every single real estate agent has to get done for every single listing? Photographs.
Mm-hmm.
So why not buy a photography company that has a drone pilot included into it? Now you wrap that in, and now you're making money. You can pimp those people out to your other competitors. I mean, others are inspection agencies. I use a company called WIN, World Inspection Agency. Someone like them, maybe. I mean, I really like your thought pattern on this. I mean, because you can, instead of paying other people, you can get paid to do the same damn thing you're already doing, right?
Mhm.
And so that's a fascinating concept, because I mean, there's so many things. I mean, it's literally, if you just bought 3 or 4, you could be a business in a box that you don't have to pay anything for it now, and you get paid to do it.
Mhm.
That's an incredibly interesting concept.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool to watch. We've got about 45 days into our mastermind program at this point, and we've already had our handful of first deals come together in 45 days.
Wow.
One of the guys runs a marketing company, like a digital marketing company, managing ad spend and whatever, and just met through his sphere, told him what he was looking for. And there was a guy that does digital marketing for a medical device company and needed a way to pull in these other clients that they weren't landing, and they pay like $5,000 a month. He had like 5 clients already, and they were about to go in front of 25. And he's like, I'm not really sure what to do. And he's like, can you just look at it, whatever? And he was like, if I were going to do this and set up all the systems and everything for you, I'd be charging like at least $100,000 right out of the gate. And he said, I'd rather just partner because I think we're going to have more and more of these opportunities. Well, it turns out, like, just walking in the door, he got 49% of the business.
Wow.
He's taken over this whole part with a team that the guy already had team members in place, but just not the system. So he's leveraging off a lot of the work within the team. That business, the day it was signed, is probably worth about $125,000 in his pocket. And it's probably up to $300,000 by them signing on like 10 more clients out of the 25 that they met with.
So
Wow.
where do you find the funding for this? Do you go hard money? Do you go traditional? Go to the banks? Is there a special place to get this? Because my good friend Jake Wolf, who owns a company called Clever Leads, who's going to be on the show next week,
Yep.
he's bought and sold a ton of different businesses. One of them was a animal shelter up in Alaska, and he did so well he actually put his competitors out of business, which was fascinating to kind of see how he did that. But I mean, I love that story. But I don't understand where you get the money. Walk me through that really quickly.
Well, I mean, similar to buying real estate, right? How do you buy like a $2 million real estate investment?
With money,
With what money?
Matt's money.
other people's money.
So you either raise it, right? You either raise
Right.
it, you go to the bank, you have it, you borrow it against your 401k. There's all different ways to do it, or you negotiate partial seller financing or all seller financing or whatever. It's the same with the businesses.
Really?
You've got SBA loans that will cover anywhere up to like 60 to 75% loan to value. You've got seller financing to figure in. You've got your own raises that you can do. You can bring on a partner. I mean, all the same ways you would do real estate deals.
So it's,
Okay.
there's nothing different. Just you're not buying a house, you're buying a business. End of
Well,
story.
I mean,
So-
yeah, the difference is instead of being backed by like Fannie Mae or whatever, they're backed by the SBA.
Okay.
And they have their own set of rules and whatever, and they're looking more at the investment side, just like you would in a commercial real estate deal.
So instead of buying a debt, you're buying an asset. I mean, you're a liability versus an asset. I mean, something that's actually going to pay you versus you have to pay it. As interesting.
Now let's talk about a little bit on just because most of us are in the position where we are the entrepreneur, most likely maybe the current small business owner, depending on who's listening, but most of us are going to be like in that entrepreneur category.
Mhm.
We're running something already. So let's talk a little bit about just the balance part, because we've just got a few minutes left of the show, because that would be my main my main concern
Mhm.
is, every minute that you spend on something like this, you have to account for, and you have to make sure energetically that you can put energy into this new thing while keeping your current, whatever your current business is or your current income stream going strong. And I think that probably if you're talking about buying a business, the difference between, let's say, like a joint venture and owning it is that if you own it and the operator wants to leave, or you lose that key person that is the one that really delivers the service, there's always one person that's the most important person in the business, and you lose that person, all of a sudden as the owner, you're the one that it falls back on to scramble to find that person or fix the business, as opposed to being a joint venture person where you can just kind of go, well, now is the time we go to our separate ways.
Mhm.
So walk me through that a little bit in terms of how you and other people are balancing what they're doing to make sure that they don't lose their current business or watch that decline while they put more energy and focus into this over here.
Yeah. So depending on who and where you are in your businesses, I would say one of two things. One, don't do it. Right?
Mhm.
Just don't do it. You're
Right.
not the right fit for it. If you're already like so bogged down in what you're doing and you have no free time resources, like this is probably not a good decision unless you're going to give one of those things up.
Right.
If one of the things that you're still carrying though is a job and trying to do a side hustle, this is a way better plan, right? Because you can go buy a business that's already paying you as much as your job and the side hustle, and then now that becomes your full time and actually gets the focus that it should be getting, right? So, but if you're running multiple businesses already and you're maxed, then this may not be a good time for you to do this, unless you do it with a joint venture, unless you do it with a partner. So, like for me, it wasn't like, oh, this is a great time for me to have a ton of extra free time. I got 3 kids homeschooling. Like I already run a brokerage. I've got my courses and books and whatever, and I'm working all on these pieces. The digital marketing piece just came from necessity. And if I didn't find the partner, I probably don't launch that digital marketing company for another year or two. But because I had a 50% partner who's the operator and they just want me to step in and be able to help promote and sell, perfect, right? Done deal. So that's what I think you are looking for in that case. If you're the investor and you've got some free cash, then I think the bigger, the better, right? And I would advise people like, don't buy a $500,000 company if you don't want to have to step in to be the operator.
Right.
Buy the $5 million company that has $2.5 million in profit, and you're going to have enough employees that even if one person leaves, the company doesn't fall apart. You get somebody to hire that other person, and you have somebody temporarily step into the role, and it doesn't have to be you.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in that position and the worry is time, but you've got the flexibility to be a little bit more aggressive, then I would be looking on the bigger side of businesses. The problem once you get past the like 4 and 5 million piece is you get into like more competition, right? Because then private equity firms are starting to look at some of those smaller deals under 10 million because there's a lot happening there.
Yeah. And the complexity goes up.
Yeah. And so the other piece play to that you were just talking about is the multiples change, right? So now you'd be paying more because the bigger the company, the more scale there is to it, the higher multiple of profit people are going to be willing to pay for it.
Right.
So that's what we were talking about with that guy who built up the $20 million landscaping company. Last time he did it organically. He just kept adding an office, adding an office, adding an office. He said, if I did it now, I'd buy like 4 or 5 that are $3 or $4 million a piece. They're all smaller, pay the smaller multiple, run them for a year as one company or a couple of years as one company, and then sell them at a higher multiple for doing 15 to 20 million a year to a bigger firm, right? Because the bigger firms aren't going to grab a bunch of $3 million companies. They're going to grab a handful of $20 million to get to 100 or 200 million.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I've got one final question. I know Greg and Gene might have some questions to pepper you with before we leave. But first of all, where's the place where people can go to get the course? And I think you've got a discount code as well.
Yeah, so they can go to buyasmallbiz.com, biz.com, and they can use uncensored 20 off.
Nice.
20% off. Uncensored 20 off.
Love it. Okay. So my question would be, if you're talking to an audience of people like me, Greg, Gene, and most of the people that listen to this show, we would consider that our skill set is the sales and marketing skill set.
Yeah.
So the fundamentals that we learn in real estate, like if you've read, like I would say, if you've read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, you know way more about actually marketing a business effectively than 99% of small business owners.
Agreed.
So if we came in and we considered that, like, look, like our skill set is the marketing piece. So where is the situation where you would advise somebody, I would just do that as a joint venture partnership where you can get out of it and just do like a revenue, like it just straight up Jay Abraham, walk in, say, I think there's potential here. Let's do a revenue, split where I get 30 or 50% of the upside of the new revenue that I get you guys by the changes that I think we can make here, as opposed to going in and trying to buy it. What's the dividing line there? I mean, obviously there's a partially a difference of just being able to tell people what to do versus getting like partnering and trying to persuade them. So I get that part of it. Is there anything else that would kind of go into that equation if that's your skill set and you go into the business expecting to be able to get it to grow bigger?
So what is the length of that payment back, I guess, is the question on
Really?
the rev share.
Okay.
Right. So if it's lifetime, then I would take the rev share. Like, why take on the additional risk of owning part of the business and whatever if I don't need to? If I get a lifetime rev share on what I increase them by, my guess is it probably phases out over time.
Yes.
Right.
2 to 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you want 2 to 3 years of income, or do you want a lifetime of passive income? And so
Right.
that would be the difference between saying, no, I'm going to come in, I can triple your business over the course of the next 2 years, but I want 30% equity to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah,
and
that's what I
so-
would look at, like with CBD businesses and stuff, where the regulatory environment is still all over the place. Like that, that's what I would do. I would go in and do rev share agreements rather than ownership. If it was a nail salon in a place of town that's just not going to change that much over the next 10 years, I'd want ownership, because once you get the marketing systems in, it'll just sit there and be a cash box for the next 10 years.
Exactly.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. So it like you said, it depends on the business. It depends on the level of risk in the business too, right? Like there are reasons not to have equity in a business if you're afraid of the downside.
Right.
So if there's not a huge downside and there is not a mega upside, but enough that it is a mega upside for the business owner, then I definitely want to see ongoing return share.
Yeah,
and I might
love
not
it.
need 50%. I'll take 30, but it's for life instead of 3 years.
Yeah. Killer. I love it. Greg, Gene?
Yeah. Give me like not too long. I know we're short on time, but give me an example of what you would term as a downside. Like, what's a red flag?
A lawsuit. A law.
So you don't want to get into like massive dialer companies?
No. So how even anything in the cannabis realm that Matt just brought up, like regulations that could put things on hold. And so there a partner that I'm not sure about.
Yeah, right.
Right. So like any of those things that sort of throw my gut, I mean, it's either a walk away or a rev share where I can walk away.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the things that we talk about a lot. It's either a hell yes or a hell no.
Right.
I mean, there's no middle ground in regards to this. I mean, you go with your gut. I mean, there was a business opportunity that I was looking at, and I was like, okay, well, I thought it was good in the beginning. Then I dug deeper into the opportunity. I'm like, nah, that's some fucked up shit, man. Nah, I can't do this. And I my gut was telling me like, no, this is a bad move.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of what you run off of, right? Obviously, look at the numbers, look at everything else, but then just internalize it. Let the energy come and soak into you and be like, yes, no. And then just say, you know what? It's okay if I say no. It's not a problem.
There's 3 resources, right? There's time, money, and energy. And the money can be great, but if it's going to suck my time or suck my energy, it's not worth it. So I'm going to go with I'm going to run on either of those. And then the last piece I wanted to comment, Matt, on what you had said is whether it's a rev share or whatever. The other piece is too, rev share can be the dating game into the equity game, right? Like you can have an opt-in after 12 months that if we're both happy with where we are based on the rev share, that this is going to convert to equity.
Yeah,
and,
that makes
and
sense.
you have the right to exercise it or not. The owner does not have the right to exercise whether or not they're going to give it to you at that point. That's the way I would write it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not
so
like
you go in
hey,
and
are
you go
we
and
neutral?
improve
Yeah.
yourself. You actually make the changes. It produces the results.
Right.
And then, you have the right to say, okay, great. Now I want to flip that rev share into actual equity because I've done my side of the bargain.
Right.
Now I get my, now I get the equity that I can take or leave. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so you would do it based on benchmarks.
Yeah.
Right? When I hit this,
Yeah.
such and such.
I love it. I mean, this is the kind of stuff like, do you know Perry Marshall or know of him?
Mm-mm.
So Perry Marshall is the guy that wrote the 80-20 sales and marketing book.
Okay.
He's also a huge fan through the 80-20 rule of Richard Koch. So Richard Koch, the guy that wrote the 80-20 principle, made all of his money, which I think he has a fortune of $500 million or $500 million, $500 million. He made that fortune starting off as he was just some management consultant at Bain. in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So he's making, he's probably making 300 grand a year, but he's not setting the world on fire. He didn't own a business. He was a consultant. But what he did is he got into buying businesses, right? And invest, like early stage investing startup. And now he's a half a billionaire. So Perry Marshall learned from him, and then Perry Marshall got into that same thing, and now he's on that kind of same track. Perry Marshall is one of those guys that has a sales and marketing skill set. He could walk into any business and help them grow. So he, first he's selling coaching, then he's doing joint ventures, and now he's getting into the buying of businesses and becoming equity partners. So I think he has an equity stake in. I think he has an equity stake in Infusionsoft. He was one of the very first investors and coached the two co-founders of Infusionsoft. So yeah, like once you get into this world, there's some really interesting opportunities that open up if you have a legit sales and marketing skill set, which if you listen to this show, you should have some semblance of one, I hope, after 5 years of doing this show. But I just wanted to suggest, like I would tell people, go get the course. And then there's great resources like Perry Marshall's books, and Richard Koch's books are insane. Simplify is amazing. The STAR Principle is amazing. Like if you want to get into buying businesses, those are the first things I would read because they're really, really fantastic for that strategy.
Love it.
Yeah. All right, guys.
You want to know something funny, actually? In this, obviously, I've never done this, but when I was a little kid, I envisioned myself in a three-piece suit, in a private jet, flying around the country, around the world, orchestrating purchases of businesses. That's literally what I thought myself. I'm like, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. And then I woke up and I'm like, you a fucking retard. That ain't going to happen. But you know what? It was always.
Well, maybe you could start by not calling yourself that. That would help. Yeah.
I'm just going off what you text me every day. Okay.
That's some
Gosh, why you gotta be so mean? All right.
You should look into buying a positive affirmation consulting company.
Okay.
Yeah. Holy
Okay,
cow. You need to pay somebody to follow you around and just tell you how awesome you are.
All right. Goodbye. Goodbye. So it's back to us.
All right. Oh my gosh.
Matt, take us home, buddy.
All right. Let's
Jesus.
In honor of Greg's hat and for reasons that we won't divulge, we're going to go with the red bow, tie it right up around this episode here. And yeah, well, first of all, before we do that, so go grab my book, Microfamous. Go to getmicrofamous.com. You can also get the links to the podcast and stuff like that. Gene, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Get me on any one of the social media sites at Gene Volpe, or just go to genevolpe.com.
All right. And then Greg, how about you?
I just like controlling the images. It's too much fun.
Mm.
Guys, everything that's been scrolling down below, go ahead and you can either email me at greg@gregmcdaniel.com. Feel free and hit me up there, or text me at my cell phone number, 925-915-1978. We are building something absolutely huge over at EXP. We are not going to create the biggest downline, guys, but we are going to actually create the biggest downline, but we're also going to create the most profitable downline using some secret things that we're putting into business. So if you guys want to learn how to do that, if you want to learn more just about EXP, go ahead and hit me up, and that's how you do it. So there it is, Matt. So we're doing a red bow. Is that it? That's
bow.
It?
You got it.
Okay, just kind of like the color of your book, Microfamous, right there. Microfamous. I love Microfamous. Microfamous is my favorite Microfamous anything. Guys,
good Lord,
guys, thank you so much for watching and listening to the show. If you found some value out of this, please go give us a 5-star, not a 2-star rating on every place where you can listen to your podcasts. We love you. We appreciate you. And until next time, peace out, ninjas. We're gone. Just super creepy like that, yeah.
Just super creepy.